Howdy people, CzarThwomp here, and welcome to episode 44 of the Grace Attorney 2 Resolve. Last time, both Enoch Drebber and Courtney Scythe were up on the stand, and we basically were doing some cross-examination where basically we were trying to prove that Enoch Drebber did in fact see the professor coming out of the grave, and that he wasn't making up, because Enoch, he's trying to distance himself from that so that way he doesn't get into any sort of trouble, and we have cornered him. We have proved that the camera that he wore that night was basically present in the wax museum, and that has blood on it. We're going to test it for blood. It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood and not the blood of some animal. But yes, to test whether or not it's blood at all is simple enough. I propose that Madame Tuspel's testimony was correct, and that on the night in question 10 years ago, you were splattered with the blood from the gunshot wound. Well, and that furthermore, you really did witness the condemned professor emerging from his tomb. Ugh. Ah! There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you're trying to hide the fact that you saw the professor that night.
Objection!
But why? Why would he want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. For whose then? Who could benefit? Anyone who is against you, Van Zeeks, because they just want to drive you to that hole of insanity. Mr. Drebber's obviously lying in order to protect somebody. My goodness, he's shielding someone? Now I'm hearing a loud lawnmower outside. Yes, my lord, and clearly, it's someone who doesn't want the truth about the professor coming back to life to be exposed. Well, counsel, who is it then? Who is this witness trying to protect by lying about what he saw that night?
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Scythe. Scythe? What? Whatever do you mean? CzarThwomp forgot to turn the timer on. Imagine if the convict who had been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine if that was to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine if the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer. If it was the professor, that would be an unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
This is beyond a joke. Need I point out that the dead cannot come back to life? What you're suggesting would mean that the execution never actually happened. Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
Objection!
Once a man is sent to the gallows, he hangs. No one can escape. Not in Great Britain. Maybe in all the other countries, but not here in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging. If that were really true, counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at the supervising coroner. It would taint the honor of the entire judiciary from the ground up. Dr. Scythe is unamused. Courtney Scythe is unamused from the very second she entered this courtroom. And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Scythe would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose the secret, even if that meant being complicit in a crime. You mean? I mean that Dr. Scythe wasn't collaborating with Mr. Drebber's wicked scheme. She was coerced into collaborating in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Asman with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Ah. Look, Lord Van Zeeks, the first thing I thought he was going to say, leg. Pray forgive my freshly filled hallowed chalice, and a whole raft of other discourtesies now. Goodness me. It's just the sort of tall tale Londoners will enjoy, I grant you. Why else would they read the trash that is the Sherlock Holmes stories? Because they have nothing better going on. An execute killer rising from the dead, a Scotland Yard cover-up, a conspiracy at the highest levels. So let me ask you one thing. What's that?
If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night, only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger? And disposed of him forever?
Well, I have no idea at the moment.
We have too little information to work that out at present, I think.
I couldn't agree more.
The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies. And have you considered this, my learned Nipponese friend?
Considered what?
Do you realize just what a dangerous endeavor it would be to coerce this woman into such a criminal activity? It's tantamount to declaring war on the entire British police force and judiciary.
Quite. How to imagine any sum of money being offered for research could warrant it?
To rely on some stage deception when so much is at stake would be madness.
Well, I suppose.
And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who'd already invested money in the venture and would be instrumental in future profits too. Yes, I had no reason to kill Mr. Asman at all. Or are you forgetting that his death resulted in me not receiving a single penny? The court is already aware of the contact between myself and the victim, no? I had to sell everything in his pockets just to break even. There is the contract. That is very true. CzarThwomp can't speak.
The motive for this case runs deep, though. I can feel it.
Using threats to force the head of the forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme, especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place.
If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Asman's life would have made no sense anyways. Which means Mr. Drebber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Asman. But why? What was his motive then?
Your time is up, my learned friend. I'd say you have one last chance before the jury loses their patience with the charade. Let's see if you can back up your heady proposals, shall we? And CzarThwomp can't speak to save his life this evening. How do you explain why this engineer would throw all caution to the wind and threaten his own country? At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence.
Alright, who exactly was Mr. Asman to Drebber? There's a connection there that no one's seen yet, and I'm going to have to present 2 pieces of evidence to show what it is. Yes, my lord. The evidence that establishes a motive and explains why the witness why the victim dead is right here.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord.
That was written 10 years ago, and every detail has been examined already. What could it possibly tell us? That drivel should never have been written. It's typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing.
Yes, on its own, it isn't particularly significant. However, when considered alongside this other piece of evidence, it will completely explain your motive for why Mr. Asman dead.
What other evidence? Counsel, you will present your supplementary evidence without delay. The evidence which when cross-referenced with the newspaper article, establishes the motive for the deed.
Simple, the contract.
Take that!
Because of the signatures. It's this contract, my lord. Mr. Drebber, this is the contract you signed with Mr. Asman.
Yes, that's right. The very document, in fact. It proves I had no reason to kill the man.
No, I'm afraid not.
What?
There's something very significant that this newspaper article and the contract have in common.
Really?
And it's that common link that shows very clearly why you were determined to kill Mr. O.D. Asman.
It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these 2 pieces of evidence have in common. Where exactly is the link between this newspaper article and the contract?
The signature.
Take that!
What these 2 pieces of evidence have in common is a signature.
A signature?
The signature on the illustration that accompanies the 10-year-old article and the signature on the contract. belong to the same person.
What? Ah!
As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about this ordeal. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen on the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed between the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Asman's signature at the bottom.
Let me see now. Good lord, yes, there are tentacles.
In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. Odie Asman.
I'm going down! Down, down!
Objection.
But explain to the court why! Why would that constitute a motive for the witness to murder Asman?
Well, if you think back, you'll remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony.
Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative.
That is
quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. Then I gave up my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article.
At the time, you were a student of the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life.
So Mr. Asman used to be a newspaper journalist, did he? He did, my lord. In fact, it's a widely held belief that Asman managed to position himself at the heart of his criminal network, thanks to the many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter.
He practiced Mini-memoism. So you had to give up your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually, you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. And all because of that article. Written by Mr. Asman.
Enough! Stop this endless drivel about my life.
What?
Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber. Yes, it's true. I had to leave the university as a result of that article. But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
What do you mean?
Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research. But they struggled on with their hypotheses anyways. We all did. Only have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your idea would be stolen, and pounded by some wretch or other, after all. Goodness gracious! Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only a select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses, so it was hardly a wretch. Being forced out to the university became a lawget because of lawget was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Mr. Drebber, do you genuinely believe that?
Of course I do! Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me?
I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all.
How dare you!
And I have evidence to prove it.
How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam! I don't know you from Andrew the Screwdriver! Fine, if you think you have evidence, go ahead, show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave the university because I lacked talent?
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found at your workshop.
Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? What exactly is this trophy, Counsel?
It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord.
There is no higher accolade. It recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious.
Your prospects for the future were indeed excellent, weren't they, Mr. Trevor? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future. Your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asman was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life, it's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man.
The truth is...
Finally, he's going to fold.
Poor Mr. Trevor.
I have to do it because basically that's Susano's main catchphrase. Oh, poor blank. Basically, she says it in so many times. If you have a drinking game, take a shot every time Susano says, oh, poor blank. Fine. Clearly this has run its course now.
What?
I admit it. All of it. What?
What are you doing?
It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim. On the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago.
No! Good Lord! Dr. Scythe! Do you realize what you're saying, woman? Once yet, do you realize what you're doing? I'm going to lose another child to my learned Nipponi's friend. I can't deal with it again.
It's all true. That day, CzarThwomp's throat was giving out, even when he's doing a monotone voice. When I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the birdcage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I'd done my best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had the chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Scythe, you will go along with my plan. From someone who knows the truth about what really happened from that night 10 years ago. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now.
Why on earth would you buckle now?
Well, there's no point trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborate in a murder. But the great lie about the execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. So then, Mr. Trevor, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything.
Surely it goes without saying.
You admit your part in it too, then?
I admit nothing at all!
What?
Have you forgotten that the kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting to a crime, there's really no possible way for you to prove that I did anything wrong. No! Order, order, order!
Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Van Zeeks.
Yes?
I hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course.
I have heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper forum in which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Trevor. The defendant is Professor Albert Hairbrain. Very true. It had slipped my mind. Or rather, I repressed it.
Isn't he one of your closest friends?
Have you met Albert, my learned friend? My learned Nipponese friend, have you dealt with him? Otherwise you would have known that you want to block him out of your head. As the court has heard, Dr. Scythe has admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt.
You mean?
At the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoings. Does the prosecution have any objections? None, my lord.
Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruto! You've proven Professor Hairbrain's innocence!
Without further ado then, the education. Unless the prosecution or defense have any other matters to discuss.
I don't know. This doesn't feel quite right. Why did Dr. Scythe suddenly admit to it like that?
Is everything alright, Mr. Naruto?
Like you said before, the way the trial is set to end now, the judge will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? What the defense should be pursuing now is further testimony. We gotta go legit.
Objection.
The defense objects to the trial ending at this time, my lord.
I beg your pardon?
We demand one final testimony.
What? You do realize I'm about to adjudicate in favor of your client, I presume. What are you playing at now, my Nipponese friend? What mind tricks are you trying to play on this court? Because you will not fool me. For you see, I have documented all of the strategies of your kind in my book, Fighting the Rising Sun. Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? No defense lawyer in his right mind would do that. Well, but then again, your mind has never been right.
Mr. Naruto, what exactly are you thinking?
The truth, the whole truth, and a way to bring it all out into the open.
Right.
Yes, in hindsight.
Ah, yes, one word of warning before I go. If in the course of the trial this afternoon you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the better end, you understand? Do not falter, whatever may come to pass.
I'm sure Mr. Sholmes knew. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client and to secure an acquittal.
Obviously.
But that's not all. I believe that I have a duty to the court to pursue the whole truth of the case till every last detail is laid bare. And that is why the defense calls for further testimony from Dr. Scythe. Testimony from me? About what? About the nature of your collaboration with Mr. Enoch Trevor. Ha! In case it's escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did.
Oh no, you did not admit to everything you did.
Shut up, Trevor. There is nothing else.
Oh no, what about those passes that you made at me? How you touched me inappropriately? How you groped my ass and said that I felt like how it certainly was in jam, because jelly don't shake like that.
The whole truth has already been revealed. So stop wasting everyone's time. Ah! As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There is simply no point in protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection.
Pray forgive my careless handling of that hallowed bottle. I slipped.
That's what you call it?
What is your objection, Lord Van Zeeks? The prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness.
Don't be stupid.
If there is more to this case that is yet to come to light, then I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end.
You'll what? Lord Van Zeeks.
This is most irregular, to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Dr. Syme, you will testify for the court. Explain the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber.
Aye, very well. The waxwork Clint. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and note tucked inside his jacket. The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. The body had to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job. I enlisted the help of the entire forensics investigation team to address the scene appropriately. The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it. So I was right. The stage and the machine were all specially designed for the deception. So it seems, and all meticulously prepared. You did well to see through it. You're a very shrewd boy. So kind of you to say.
And what about this autopsy report then?
All I did was record the location of the body as being in the Crystal Tower instead of under the stage.
That's all? That's a terrible corruption!
And then meanwhile Blaze 100 years in the future.
Yeah, hold my auction gavel that I used to kill a woman, and then proceed to swap the order of the murder weapons.
Only my team were aware of the deceit, and then only under my explicit instructions. Nobody else at Scotland Yard knew anything about it, I assure you.
We must be thankful for some small mercies, I suppose. Well, I believe that testimony has clarified everything. There's no particular need for a cross-examination, I would say.
No, I disagree. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Just look at the expression on Dr. Syme's face. She's just done with it. It's the defense's right to cross-examine any witness following testimony. What is it about you Japanese that makes you all so doggedly persistent?
Very well. If you so desire, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination.
Yes, my lord. Okay, let's start pressing. From what you described before, it sounds like the note was anonymous. Did you have any idea of who was behind it? There are very few people in the know about what really happened 10 years ago to start with. But anyways, I'd never heard of this engineer. So no, I had no idea.
Oh well, thank you for raising my self-esteem.
Yet despite not knowing who was behind the plan, you went along with it? I had no choice. Protecting the professor's secret was my only concern.
But the horse has bolted now, and the stable door will never shut again. Scotland Yard's reputation will be immeasurably damaged as a result of this.
Yes, thank you, Lord Van Zeeks. I'm very well aware of that.
So as I understand it, what you found at the birdcage was the waxwork model. Where then was the victim's body?
Under the floorboards.
Hold it!
So you knew about the special construction of the stage used to carry out the trick then? It was quite obvious what had happened with the victim and the waxwork. And you switched the two over, didn't you? In other words, you recorded the victim's body as having been discovered in the Crystal Tower, and the waxwork. I wrapped it and sent it by carriage to the specified address at the specified time. And why were you given such directions?
Presumably so it could be recovered by Drebber and returned to Madame Truspel's.
I see. And then you put the birdcage back on the experimentation stage? Yes, although someone obviously made a mistake about which cage should go where. I thought I'd made it perfectly clear to the team, but still. I suppose you were focused on the victim's body, that being a more important detail. Okay.
Hold it!
I think this is the one. When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this. Andrew the screwdriver. Yes, the instructions in the engineer's note said something along the lines of fabricate some evidence to make it clear that Hairbrain alone could have killed Asman. So, you mean that was your doing? I fetched Hairbrain's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage. Ridiculous? How dare you call Andrew ridiculous? Do I call your children ridiculous? Should I bring Maria in here? Do you want me to bring her in? And then basically just Scythe brings in her own daughter. Okay, yeah, her daughter wearing her plague mask. Come on, say that she's ridiculous. Come on. She scares me. She scares everyone.
Can I cut his flesh off, Mommy? Can I consume the flesh and nibble on it?
Yes, you may nibble on it for all to see. No! I need my flesh!
Yes, he needs his flesh, alright. He needs his flesh so he can touch the grace.
And took it with me, alone, to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage had fallen.
Alone, Doctor?
I wanted some alone time with it. It turned me on in more ways than one. I'm a coroner for a reason, you know. I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anyone else in that particular part of the deception. There was a void under the stage where I found the birdcage lying in the dirt. I approached it, leaned down, and slowly opened it up. Then, I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest without a single shred of emotion. I am dead on the inside, as you can see. And then you noted that in your fake autopsy report as a fictitious cause of death. Exactly.
So, the actual cause of death was
the trauma resulting from the 30-foot drop.
My word.
What is it, Mr. Sato?
Something about Dr. Sai's last statement. It's playing on my mind, that's all.
Yes, mine too. Dr. Scythe. There's really no need to shout. I can hear you perfectly well. The defense calls for you to add what you just said to your formal testimony. Oh, which part? What I want her to supplement her testimony with is what she did to the victim. The X-rated stuff that she did to the victim. How you stabbed Mr. Asman in the chest. That's part. Fine, if that's what you want. But there's really no need to point.
I can point too! The prosecution concurs! Plus, my learning Ebony's friend, he doesn't know how to point correctly. Notice how he just juts his arm out. No class whatsoever. Whereas I gracefully put my finger down and let my hand float. It's as if I'm petting a dog or stroking the mane of a wild mare. Very well. You will supplement your testimony now, witness.
If you wish, my lord. And this one can actually be... Yeah, and I remember this one, because basically this one can actually throw you for a loop. Because notice how on the photograph, basically, you have the blood dripping down. Is it basically he was leaning upright?
Objection!
There we go. I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth.
What on earth is the matter, Counsel? Have you lost your tongue?
Well, one thing's for certain. This episode, I think now would be a good time to end things off. Anyways, I really appreciate that you stuck around to watch this episode. You're a great viewer, and I hope you come back for the next one. If you like this video, like, subscribe, comment, share, do whatever you want. Well, I'll see you next time. Bye.